wrestling fans? It is Kyle Gagliardi, and I am the host of the On the Mark Wrestling Podcast, hosted by the Marks for the Marks, and I'm here with a YouTube review. We decided not to go with a regular podcast this week due to social distancing and whatnot. We just wanted to crank out individual reviews for Wednesday Night Wrestling, because that's really all we have to look forward to is NXT and AEW. That, and when I say we, I mean for the show's purposes, because we're big fans of both WWE and AEW. So I drew the stick of AEW Dynamite, so I will be reviewing this week's Dynamite from April 15th, 2020. And like I said, I am the host of the On the Mark Wrestling Podcast, which is a part of the Overtime Sports Network, which this YouTube video is being brought to you by @_OTSN, and OTSportsNetwork.com is where you can check out the network. And you can follow our show at Pod on the Mark. We usually release an episode every Thursday night. Perfect for your Friday morning commute, for those of you that still are commuting during these tough times. And speaking of tough times, I know this is an AEW review, but man, what a rough day it was for professional wrestling, as I'm recording this literally right after Dynamite finished. A lot of releases in the WWE. So, you know, tough times, but we still got wrestling on Wednesdays. So that's what we're here to talk about, and that's what I'm going to talk about right now. The first matchup here on AEW Dynamite was Lance Archer versus Colt Cabana. This is probably the first legitimate opponent that either man has faced so far. I didn't even know Colt was 3-0 in AEW before this match, but I'm assuming it's because he's been on AEW Dark and whatnot, because I don't watch AEW Dark. I only watch Dynamite, and this obviously was the very first legitimate opponent for Lance Archer. Don't know much about Lance Archer because I never watched him. I believe he was in New Japan. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't watch anything other than AEW and WWE, but Colt actually lasted a little longer than I expected in this one. I thought this was going to be that prototypical squash match, which it kind of was. A little bit of a showcase for Lance Archer, who's very agile for a big man. I mean, he's 6'7", he's a monster. He's got a great look. He's partnered with Jake the Snake Roberts. I mean, there's a lot of potential here with Lance Archer in AEW. I like what I'm seeing, but it obviously wasn't enough for Colt Cabana. He wasn't able to pick up the victory here. This was a matchup in the TNT Championship Tournament, so Lance Archer advances to the next round after beating Colt Cabana. Another big win for Lance Archer, who, honestly, he could be the first ever TNT champion. I mean, it's going to be tough to anybody to, go over on him right now. He's just being built up like a star. He's got one of the best promo guys and, character workers in Jake Roberts. So it's going to be tough to stop Lance, but he's advancing to the semifinals of the tournament. Like I said, match was a little better than I expected. If I were to give it a grade, I'd give it a B-. It wasn't bad. I was entertained, but Lance Archer, like I said, advanced. After that, we had Britt Baker, who I am a huge fan of. I love Britt Baker. I love what she is doing in AEW. And if you don't listen to the show, I've stated a million times, I love the new attitude that she brings. I mean, that is so good. It's great heel work. She was cutting this video package in her dentist office, because, come on, that's what the DMD stands for. She's a part of the dentist world. But she was basically just explaining how much of a role model she is, being that cocky heel. And she does it very well, I must say. And like I said, just good stuff here from Britt Baker. Great character work. So I'm a fan of that, but we'll see a match of hers in a little later. But we'll get to that when we get there. But also throughout the show, something that I noticed was that they were talking to a lot of people outside of AEW, trying to get their pick for tonight's AEW World Heavyweight Championship title, which is something you don't really get every day, so it made this feel kind of important, which I like, and that's a nice little touch that AEW does, as well as Taz, giving his commentary and his analysis about some of the holds that Hager does with that MMA background. So good stuff all around there, but, going back to Britt Baker, she had a match, and honestly, I don't remember the female competitor that she faced. I'm sorry, but it was what you call a squash match. Britt went over, just continuing her momentum. It looks like we're kind of leading to her and Shida having this feud. Maybe they're next in line for Nyla Rose's championship. Who knows? We haven't seen Nyla Rose in a while, but it's probably because she didn't want to, do these shows during the coronavirus time. So we'll see. Britt Baker gets the win here, though. Like I said, nothing special with this match, Just her doing her heel stuff and continuing her role, just like Hikaru Shida, who was ringside. After that, the Bubbly Bunch made their appearance. You know, this was a video package, obviously, with the Inner Circle, and you could tell that they were adding a lot of things like this in video packages, you know, to fill some time, because this was probably pre-recorded. I know the main event definitely was, but I'm almost certain that this whole show was pre-recorded, so they had to fill these 2 hours. But it's a fun little segment once again. I mean, just building characters through video packages is what AEW is doing with this time, and it works well. I mean, it's funny stuff. You know, it's obviously a knock on the Brady Bunch, or a parody, I should say. That's probably the better word, not a knock. But overall, fun segment. It was on the show. I was entertained. You know, no complaints. I mean, after that, Sammy Guevara would face off against Suge D. I think that was his name. Once again, I don't know a lot of these other superstars that we don't see on a weekly basis. But once again, we're going to call this a showcase match, you know. It's getting everyone ready for Sammy Guevara versus Darby Allin next week in that TNT Championship Tournament matchup. He went over easily with Suge D. And Sammy Guevara, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, one of the, if not the most underrated superstar in AEW. That's my opinion. You can like it or you can hate it. I don't really give a shit. Sammy Guevara is the most underrated superstar in AEW. He knows he's a douche. Good. He's the Spanish God. They have great heels in AEW, but I just love his in-ring work paired with his personality. I think what Sammy Guevara can bring to the table is very valuable. So he gets the win over Suge D. And like I said, not really much of a match here. It was kind of just a showcase match. Seems to be a common trend, as you will see tonight. After that, we would get Chuck Taylor, one half of the Best Friends, versus Kip Sabian. This wasn't a squash match. This actually was a back-and-forth kind of match. We had Orange Cassidy ringside, my guy, freshly squeezed Orange Cassidy. And Penelope Ford obviously was there too. I believe she's fiance now of Kip Sabian, so congratulations to them. I know you're not watching, so who cares? But yeah, they were ringside, and that made it a little more entertaining. You know, having people ringside, having those, you know, fans there and some of the roster, it helps with the empty arena stuff, you know. It gets that volume up a little bit, and the shenanigans on the outside with Orange Cassidy and Penelope Ford were good. Ford gets involved like she always does. I mean, we always see Penelope Ford get involved in Kip Sabian's matches, and you know that's virtually would do it too. Her distraction, she hit a Hurricane Rod off the top rope on Chuck Taylor, and then Jimmy Havoc delivered a DDT type move. I don't know if that's his finisher. Once again, do not know much about Jimmy Havoc, but he would hit Orange Cassidy with that move on the outside. So overall, it was a solid match, nothing special, but very good. It makes sense for Kip Sabian to get the win here, since, like I said, he's competing in that TNT tournament. So Chuck Taylor's not. I mean, he's one half of the Best Friends. He doesn't need a singles win here. Makes sense for Kip to go over when he's going to be having a match, I believe, next week. So overall, I was okay with it. Nothing great, nothing bad, but Kip Sabian gets the win. Also, Chris Jericho on commentary, I mean, this should surprise no one, because whatever Jericho touches turns into gold. Another instance here in this Dynamite. I mean, he said some things that actually made me laugh out loud. It's hard for commentators nowadays to, you know, make me LOL in real life, and unlike Jerry Lawler, who's a racist on commentary, but that's another topic for another day. Not a big Jerry Lawler fan, if you did not know that. But after that, we would get Shawn Spears versus... Oh, who cares? Who cares who Shawn Spears is facing? It's a jobber. This is another squash match, and I'm sitting here, I'm watching this, I'm like, I really thought Shawn Spears could be something in AEW. I thought he could be a major player. When he made that jump over after his departure from WWE, I was like, this is somebody to keep an eye on. This is a guy that can win championships. I think we've had enough time to digest and form an opinion of him in AEW, and I just think Shawn Spears is bland. I mean, if you don't like that, I'm sorry. We all have our wrestling opinions, but this is my review, not yours. So I think Shawn Spears is just not cutting it in AEW, and maybe that's his fault. Probably is, because he's being put on TV. Actually, it's not kind of his fault. I think it is his fault, and maybe not having Tully Blanchard there kind of hurts him a little bit, but the 10 gimmick, you know, 10 in NXT was actually entertaining, and I enjoyed it, but whatever he's doing right now in AEW is not working. But he gets the win here in this squash match against, who cares, like I said, who he's facing. So another squash match here on Dynamite from April 15th, which would then lead us to the main event, the match we were all looking forward to, or most of us were looking forward to, the match that they really built to over the past couple weeks and this week's Dynamite. Jake Hager versus Jon Moxley in a no-holds-barred match in an empty arena for the AEW Championship. It started off very technical, as most Jake Hager matches are, because he has that amateur background. He wrestled in college and whatnot. He was a good collegiate wrestler. We all know that story, and they tell it every time, whether it was in WWE as Jack Swagger or right now as Jake Hager in AEW. But that's how this match started up. Since this match, though, took place in an empty arena, and I obviously know this was pre-recorded because it was in the venue they were at a couple weeks ago, they had to take it to their advantage, which they did. I mean, they went into the stands, they incorporated the guardrails and whatnot, but I actually think not having your plants, quote-unquote, superstars ringside just making noise and, creating some kind of buzz around this match and kind of hurt it a little bit. I don't know. I think for the first 20 minutes, this match kind of just was slow. And then that's how these kind of matches are going to be, because it's no holds barred and anything goes. But I wanted to see a little bit more use in this one. We could have seen more tools, more toys in this matchup. We got a couple chairs. The chair spots were okay. I mean, that's how Moxley won this one. Spoiler alert, Jon Moxley is still the AEW World Heavyweight Champion. He would hit the paradigm shift on Hager, onto the chair. I just wanted a little more throughout this whole match. And like I said, maybe it was the empty arena. Maybe it was the fact that we just had JR in commentary and he had to carry the load by himself. But overall, I thought the main event was just solid. And then that was pretty standard for tonight's AEW Dynamite. I usually am a huge fan of each and every Dynamite. I think AEW does a great job. This is not me knocking AEW. I just wasn't a huge fan of this week's show. Plain and simple. Next week looks really good. The card looks a lot better than what it was tonight. I just thought with a World Heavyweight Championship match, it needed a little bit more to stand out. This just felt like another match, another no-holds-barred match that we've seen plenty of times in professional wrestling. But Moxley retains, and the question for me really is now, who's next? I don't know. Good question. Brody Lee? I don't know. I'm just throwing out names right now. It's obviously not Matt Hardy. He seems to be in a program with Chris Jericho. But that is the big question now after his retain in this no-holds-barred match against Jake Hager. Jon Moxley, who is next for him at probably Double or Nothing. But like I said, overall, I did not like this week's Dynamite. Probably a bottom 5 show of mine that they have done since they started, but still was entertained, still was able to get through it. So it's not like a SmackDown where you're fast-forwarding through everything. Obviously, you can't do that when you're watching live, but it wasn't that bad. I just have to be a little bit more critical because this is an AEW Dynamite review, and I'm a mark. And you can follow me on Twitter at 2SweetKyle, 2Sweet! And make sure you check out the On The Mark Wrestling Podcast on Twitter at PodOnTheMark. And you can check us out on Libsyn, onthemarkpod.libsyn.com. That's it for my AEW Dynamite review from April 15th, 2020. I hope you guys have a great day, great weekend, and stay safe out there, Marks.